Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order for the Kerrville Economic Improvement Corporation. Before we start with the agenda, I've been asked to read this. The upward trending local COVID-19 numbers coming from Peterson Regional Medical Center played a major factor in influencing the decision to return to social distancing measures at the Economic Improvement Corporation meetings. This decision was made late last week after the hospital reported a high number of COVID-related hospitalizations, and the growing numbers of new COVID cases over the weekend only reaffirmed that this move is in the best health interest of the public, the Economic Improvement Corporation members, and the staff. Since last Friday, Peterson has reported 55 new coronavirus cases, with 26 people hospitalized on Monday. Among those hospitalizations, 8 were in the intensive care unit and 6 of those were on ventilators. Because of this trend, we are committed to doing all we can to keeping our citizens safe while at City Hall and helping the hospital flatten the curve on this recent COVID surge. Standard safety protocols will be observed by the EIC, city staff, and citizens visitors attending EIC meetings. And while wearing a mask at the EIC meetings is voluntary, we highly encourage it as a preventative health measure. We will observe 6-foot distance seating, with visitor seating being designated. Visitor overflow will be in the City Hall lobby or outside City Hall. Citizens are encouraged to view and hear EIC meetings on Spectrum Channel 2 or by live streaming via the city's website, kerrvilletx.gov. Economic Improvement Corporation meetings are also recorded, and the recordings posted on the city's website and Facebook pages. Greg Appel is going to lead us in our invocation.
Please bow with me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, you are great and greatly to be praised. So it's only right that we should stop and pause and acknowledge you as we start this meeting. Lord, we just ask that you would guide us, grant us your wisdom and direction as we consider things that affect our community. Lord, we just thank you so much for allowing us to live here and be a part of this. And we just ask for your continued hand of blessing over this community. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Do we have any visitors or citizens that have signed up to speak?
No, sir.
All right. Then we'll move on to item 3A on the agenda, which is the minutes from the regular EIC meeting held July 19th, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve those?
I move.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That unanimously is approved. Okay, under monthly reports, first up is Mr. Salinas, KEDC.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'll start with some economic indicators. Specifically, numbers that were released last week from the U.S. Census Bureau. The state of Texas is now just under 30 million people in population, so that puts us at about 29.1 million. That's a 16% growth rate from 25.1 million 10 years ago. Now at the local level, Kerr County posted about 6% growth rate. So that's up from 49,625 people in 2010 to 52,600 people in 2021. So that's an increase of almost 3,000 people. Now, of that population growth, almost 2/3, so basically 2/3 of that growth is within the city limits of Kerrville. We're at about almost 2,000, 1,981 people that moved into Kerrville. So that's an 8.64% growth. So we're now at about 24,278 people, up from 22,347 10 years ago. Now keep in mind that Kerrville actually shrank from 2000 to 2010. We shrank by about 3%. But this last decade, now we posted a growth. Now taking a step back and look at all of Texas is growing, except for some pockets of East Texas, and then West Texas and the Panhandle are ones that are not posting either growth or they're actually shrinking. The largest growth was in New Braunfels, which is Comal and Hays County, also San Marcos. They grew at more than 50%. And what's interesting is that the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, everything that's coming out as far as the U.S. Census Bureau and population and demographics is all pointing at that corridor between San Antonio and Austin. They said it's basically mind-blowing the kind of growth that we're seeing in that area. Some of the demographic patterns that we're seeing as economic developers, this is just the beginning. It's just a matter of time that we're going to be seeing that growth spilling over into our area. We're actually already seeing some of that right now. So I truly think that this is a precursor of things to come. Have to be careful where I say this, because sometimes in some Rotary groups, people will be like, we didn't ask for that. I'm like, what growth is coming? I'm not saying we're going to be in New Braunfels in 2030, but I'm definitely saying that that growth is coming, and there's a huge opportunity for us to really mold that growth. So it's our decade. So let's make it count. Now, as far as projects, some of the pending projects that we reported at the last meeting, there's been no major movement with those. We do have one that came online about a couple of weeks ago. We were contacted by Site Selector out of the Carolinas. We popped up on their radar. It's a supplier for an automotive OEM. So an OEM is original equipment manufacturer. That's basically Ford, GM, Chrysler, the big three. We're in the process of submitting the information. It's a pretty intensive proposal. These proposals require a lot of coordination with different agencies in your region, so we're in the process of doing that. We're hopeful that we'll get a site visit from this particular company. Again, it's in the automotive sector. It's advanced manufacturing, a great opportunity for us. That's all the information we have right now. We have a conference call set up with them next week to see where we stand as far as the proposals. But again, we're on the radar. They called us up and they said, you all need to submit. The America Rescues Act, the EDA issued a notice of funding opportunity. It's a NOFO. They're making $3 billion available in funding. They announced this about almost 3 weeks ago. And this specifically for communities that are in distress as a result of COVID. So they're looking for projects and programs related to creating jobs. Tourism-related programs. That was I had never seen that before, but now they want to see tourism-related projects, entrepreneurial programs, and anything related to workforce training. We're in the process of we're doing a deep dive as far as the EDA, what they have to offer, to see if there's a fit for Kerrville. I think we found a couple of fits. It might be require some interagency collaboration, which we're no strangers to doing that, to make sure that we get some kind of funding through the federal government. Along those lines, we had a conference call with at the request of the IEDC, that's the International Economic Development Council. They asked us to be on a conference call with Mr. Dominic Graves. He is a U.S. Deputy Secretary of Commerce. There was only between 50 and 60 economic developers that were asked to be a part of this. There were 5 from the state of Texas. And so we had an opportunity to discuss, some national and global trends, the EDA, the funding that's coming, that's in the pike, what we can do with it. But I mean, it's pretty good that Kerrville has a seat at the table right now, at least with his administration, with some of the programs that they have, the fact that they asked us to be there. So we're hopeful that that'll result into some dollars down the road. Austin, we had some legislative visits. Again, it's just Workforce Commission, providing some updates. Now they're starting to ask, some of the projects from last year, where we're at on those. We also had a meeting with a Texas Film Commissioner. This is a result of collaborating with the Chamber and the CVB. This was actually an idea from the CVB with Julie Davis, who's also on my board. So we have the Business and Innovation Forum, and the CVB said, how about because they have the Film Commission, how about if we get, some film stuff happening in that particular program, we can get the Texas Film Commissioner to come in. So we had a very good conversation with them, and it looks like we're going to be getting a visit from them for our particular program. So again, it's going to be a very well-rounded forum. So again, we're on the forum, we're finalizing that program. We've got a handful of national industry speakers that are coming in, some breakout sessions. It's going to happen at the Arcadia. We're going to be using some of the downtown shops for sessions. And then the Office of the Governor is partnering with us, and they're going to have theirs at Schreiner University. The second day, it's a 3-day conference, the second day, and it's a small business series where they're bringing in between 250 and 300 small businesses from the Hill Country area. and we're one of 3 cities in the state of Texas that is hosting this small business series. That just means it's a big deal. So
What's the date of that again?
that is November 3rd through the 5th. And next couple of weeks, maybe as soon as next week, we'll start doing the promo for the event. This is really going to give us a great opportunity, or I guess this is really designed for local entrepreneurs, some of our innovators, giving them an opportunity to meet some high-profile speakers, some experts in their field, some investors and some funders, and really just tapping into our network to start really expanding their businesses, or any innovator entrepreneur that has a business idea. This is a place for them to come in and launch their operation. In closing, I've got the Southern Economic Development Council. That is the oldest and largest regional economic development association. Covers 17 states from Texas to Florida to Virginia and to Arkansas. We submitted for some, they had a contest. They usually have an annual contest as far as top of the class for economic development organizations in the South. And we got 4 awards. One was a certificate of superior for our top 40 program. It was a certificate of excellence for our social media. Then we got best in class for a small division, brand packaging of the Economic Dialogue podcast. And then a special judges award for branding, concept, and execution, again, of our different marketing programs. So again, and I think last year we announced some awards that we got through the IEDC. So not just only adds to our trophy case, but definitely it's, yeah, we need a trophy case now, but we're getting Kerrville out there. The name, the brand Kerrville is getting recognized nationally, and anytime we can do that, just good for the area and us in economic development. As a matter of fact, I've already gotten some calls of people who didn't know that I was working here. So again, it just goes back to our overall mission of making this a better place for or a destination for investment. That concludes my report.
Any questions?
I have a
Okay, thank you,
question.
Gil.
I hope this isn't too long a question. It's a little bit off topic, but obviously we have issues across the region because of all the job growth and job creation with labor force participation and actually availability of people to fill those jobs, especially in the food services and other service businesses. How concerned are you about that, and are there things that we can do to help address that issue?
I'm not going. It's between concerned and very concerned, medium concerned, I guess. Everybody in the state of Texas is experiencing those problems. Just not enough people to fill those jobs. Kerrville is a little interesting in the sense that we're at about between 4% and 5% unemployment rate. When companies are looking at a particular community, their magic number is usually 5 to 7%. Once you get to 4, they stop looking. They're like, no, because after 4% or under 4% is basically that population is not unemployable, for whatever reason it might be. And I won't get into political things, but that's what it is. We're pretty much there. We're almost at 4+%. When I first got here, we're at like at 2.9%. That being said, because it is Kerrville, some of the companies that are calling is because they want to be here. And they're like, we'll make it work. And we're like, well, that's what we're here for. So it's kind of like, it puts us in a very unique situation. Moving forward, and we've already had some sidebar conversations with some of our board members, and this is coming up in our either next board meeting or 2 board meetings down the road, which is going to lead to our stakeholder retreat, which you all are going to be a part of, is to start having that discussion about this is a destination, people want to be here, the jobs would be here if we have more rooftops, if we have shovel-ready sites, so on and so forth. So that is a very meaningful discussion that we're going to be having very soon. You all are going to be a part of that as well, because there's a decision we have to make. Do we want to grow? Then here's some strategies. If we don't, then we start reprioritizing. And there's nothing wrong with either or strategies. It's just a matter of how we're going to approach it.
Thank you.
Gil, this is and I'm not sure even how to phrase this question. This whole budget growth is really on my mind, and talking to a lot of people and trying to step back and take a little higher, I guess, that helicopter view and do what's best for the city. So this is not a leading question, it really is sincere. You started your report that we're on the radar, we're not gonna be New Braunfels, but it's coming this way. How hard do we have to work at it? And I'm not trying to talk you out of a job, I'm just,
Yeah.
do we need to be spending $500,000 a year on economic development if it's coming anyway?
Yeah.
And I'm sure can we control it, can we slow it, and I guess that's what I'm asking, help me through that.
Okay, so the short answer is yes, we need it. Because it puts us in a position to cherry pick what we want. As opposed to just being, if we're proactive, we can go after the projects and the companies that make sense for us, as far as primary jobs and the ones that fall into our sectors. If we're reactive, which means there's a smaller budget and we're just gonna be answering the phones and just waiting for that growth to come, then we're just gonna get whatever comes our way. That's basically, where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
All right, you've all received a copy of the EIC project status update from City Manager Hoppy. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that report?
Yeah, I didn't look at it close, there's really no changes, or?
No big changes. We do have bids that came in on the Light the Island effort, so that'll be going to council here in the next 4 weeks or so. We've left Olympic on right now, just start of school, and we'll be doing some restriping, but we'll be taking that one off here probably in the next month or two. But other than that, no big changes.
What about the airport? Isn't there some movement at the airport?
Not any near-term movement on anything related to EIC projects. I think they are hopefully getting closer to moving forward with some of their tech stop projects.
Okay.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments on that, we'll move on to item 4C, the monthly financial report.
Good afternoon, chair members. I just want to take a second to introduce myself. I'm Trina Rodriguez. I am the finance administrator here at the City of Kerrville. Been here about 13 years. I usually work behind the scenes, so I just want to kind of see what relativity do I have here. Most of my responsibilities pertain around treasury operations, reconciliation, investment management, some debt management, project accounting, just a multitude of things. But I do track the EIC financials, so I'm here to give you the July update.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Okay, so this first page here is your statement of activities, and I'll be referring mostly to the second and third columns. That is your current period and the year-to-date actuals. So EIC sales tax came in pretty solid for the month of July at $370,485, and do keep in mind that the receipts are for May sales. This is a 5.71% increase over July 2020 actuals. So July 21 is about 28% better than budget. But if you recall, we were building the 21 budget during the pandemic, and due to all of the unknowns, we remained very conservative, so that figure looks a little bit high. With that being said, and July receipts coming in, EIC has met its 21 sales tax budget, so we are now $29,000 to the good. So that's very great news. 2 more months to go for the year. We actually did already receive August sales tax, and it came in quite healthy as well. EIC's portion is $430,000, and that's a 16.96% increase over August 2020 actuals. We did receive the detail. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
tell me about the detail.
We did receive the detail date for the August figures, and it looks like 2 of the larger payers, they paid in advance. So even if we take those dollars out, receipts remain up about 13.20% over 2020. We still are seeing big dollars from food service, construction, wholesale, retail, manufacturing sales. So those are keeping us strong. And I know we always give you a lengthy analysis on sales tax, but we follow it closely because it is your main revenue source and it is very volatile. So we have to consider the many X factors that to see what's driving the trends. This summer, the government has influxed the economy with more stimulus money. Construction material costs still remain up, inflation, and all the planned the events that were canceled last year, they did happen this year. So we have Kerrville's a drive destination, so we have some tourism coming in also, and they're making use of your invested projects, you know, River Trail, sports complex, all that. So we're trying to keep all those things in mind when we're trying to project out. Interest income, very little for the month of July, $126. ESE does keep all its funds invested in taxable, and it's earning 6 basis points at the moment, and that's 0.06%. Thankful that sales tax is still going strong. Moving on to expenditures, you'll see the monthly administrative fees to the city at $15,417. EIC did make the final quarterly payment to KEDC at $49,375, and your monthly debt transfer approximately $91,000. Down in projects, not much activity going on there, as EA stated. For the month of July, just Doyle School, they have remitted receipts for some architect and engineering at $8,294 total. But we do know that there's more paid out in August already. So
What was our total amount, committed amount to Doyle School?
$650,000, and I think they have about $77,000 remaining. EIC's July change in net position is in the black, a little over $206,000, and that's an overall net change year to date at $65,355. Okay, moving on to your cash flow. In the first column, you'll see that July 2021's ending cash balance is $2.4 million. For your FY21 projection column, August and September sales tax are estimated to bring in about another $733,000. And if we do meet that sales tax number, we'll end the year exceeding budget by about approximately $763,000. We do still expect about $300 to come in for interest, and you have 2 more months of administrative fees and debt service to book. Down in projects, I want to make you aware that there were a few changes from the original presentation that we sent out. Nothing that affects the July numbers, though, that we just talked about. But last week we did receive a request from Kildare Mountain Manufacturing, and they would like to utilize the incentive agreement for the construction costs, $250,000 that you had made out. So if everything maps out, we foresee that payment going out within the next week or 2. So that's to take into account for your projects. And we have the Doyle School there with a remaining of 77.
What's the scope of that request?
Essentially, it's the renovation elements that they've thus far completed within the facility, and they have met their obligations per the contract as far as actually signing a construction contract to move forward.
They have done that?
They have done that.
Do they have a date for construction to start?
My understanding is that building permits are imminent. So,
Okay. So
we're hopeful that that will be a pretty quick process, and I'm hoping that they'll start construction by the end of the calendar year.
Very good.
So it looks like EIC's projected year-end cash balance be a healthy $2.6 million. On your far right columns of your cash flow, you'll see your proposed FY22 budget numbers. We have sales tax at $4.223 million. Interest income is close to $10,000, and that's we put that in kind of high, I say, but around 30 basis points on the relative balance per quarter. Your administrative fees, $195,000 for the year. We do plug in some professional services for $10,000. That stayed the same as last year, and that's just in case we have to go out and get some extra expertise on something. And then we have, $312,500, and that's KDC's proposed 22 budget numbers, and $1,089,369 for debt service. Down at the bottom, your projects, they're not all listed out here because a lot of those are going to fall off. They're fully funded and wrapping up. So you'll notice that your ending cash balances are a little higher every quarter, but those are subject to change if you are to commit to some projects. Okay. And on to your financial analysis. This last slide here is just, it just reflects your remaining balances in those projects. Airport, not much movement there. Dole School should be wrapping up soon, and Killdeer just requested that majority of that final payment. On your far right chart, that's your tax pool balance, 2.463227, and these are completely safe and liquid investments, but the rates are not too great, so we'd like to think there's some better options out there for you to earn more. We would like to possibly call, get with our depository bank, maybe see if we did at one point have a checking account for EIC. Interest rates were higher, so costs on those were higher. There was not very much activity in the checking account, so we kept most of the funds at Texpool. But it was earning more at that time, so that was probably the better route to go. But we just want to see what other options, what other EICs are doing out there just to get a little bit extra earnings in their portfolio. So we can reach out to our investment advisors also to see if they have some options or ideas for you guys. Your bottom left corner, you can see the EIC sales tax comparisons by dollar percentage, and that's just your prior year to 21 budget and then your true actuals. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Sir.
All right, our next item on the agenda is the KEDC budget for the fiscal year 2022 to include annual funding for the Kerr Economic Development Corporation. I believe where we left off last meeting was, I think Greg and Danny wasn't it the two of you that were going to investigate and try to get some more insight into the budget? Do you guys want to report back?
Well, I was involved quite a bit via telephone with Gil on this, and I like the presentations we've got now. I think we got figured out better the sponsored events, revenue and expenses, as you can see, broken out down there on the very bottom of the third page, that the events are gonna be held early, or I guess in the next month or so. So part of that money is about $18,000 loss that will happen this year, and next year projecting it to go up a little more to 27.5 with increased expenses, but being conservative and keeping the the revenues at the same
Bill, do
level.
you have slides for any of this?
No.
Do we have hard copies?
It's included within your packet.
It was in the packet.
I missed it.
We can get you copies though if you need them.
Go ahead, Danny, my apologies.
No, that's, I thought everybody had a copy, sorry.
Well, I thought I printed it all out, but obviously I didn't. Thank you, EA.
I think going down and looking at the detail, which accountants like me, of course, love, you can see that most expenses seem to be trending between 2021 and the 21-22 year in a reasonable manner. Obviously, they're up from 19 to 20 for the reasons we talked about the last meeting. So, I'm sure the KEDC board has looked at these also in some detail, and I think, Gil can answer any particular questions that someone might have about a particular category. I didn't dive into the individual detail, more of just the overall presentation and being sure that we had things in the same categories between the years, and I'm comfortable that we've done that now, so, I'll let Gil take over if he's got any. I don't know if there's any particular questions that you had, Greg, or?
No, I think I just wanted to hear back from, the results of y'all's further inquiry into this. Greg, do you have anything to add?
I'll share a couple of things. Gil and I spoke and just kind of addressed some things that stuck out at me in reviewing primarily the historical year's results. We did have 32,812 in uncategorized income for the fiscal year 20 to 2021. That's proceeds from a PPP loan. So that would be, in my view, kind of non-operating income, non-recurring income. Also, it looks like we're showing prior year's income as an income item.
That's, yeah, that category is a little bit misleading. That's a drawdown of surplus.
Right.
And that really shouldn't
so
be.
that seemed unusual to me too. I was trying to get a sense for, you know, balancing each year's fiscal budget and operating within the revenues, which are, obviously revenues are pretty predictable. And I did note that, if you back out the events income and the events expense, which really we just started doing this year, the non-recurring income and the carryover income, and just looked at current year operating income and operating expenses, there was significant losses in this current fiscal year of about $66,000. That's after the PPP loan, so $98,000 before the PPP loan. And then 2 years ago in 18 to 19, about a $60,000 shortfall. So I am concerned, Gil, about the current operating reserves of KEDC, which seem like they're projected to be close to zeroed out as of the end of this year. So could you address that?
And as far as almost zeroing out, that's because we knew that there was a surplus and coming in with a voluntary budget cut, not just this fiscal year, but the previous fiscal year. We knew that we were going to be basically skirting that, so that's where we're at. But, now we're coming back with an ask to get us back to where we used to be 2 years ago, which is closer to a $400,000 budget, but trying to make up for that as well.
I know Maggie's not here, and she's kind of our representative on the KEDC board, but can you kind of address kind of what the board participation and controls are on budget throughout the year to ensure that, particularly on the expenditure side, that the corporation operates close to the budget projections?
And that we meet on a monthly basis, and we present our financials there. We present all the different programs that we're working on and with, and that includes, prospect travel, meeting with, local companies, so on and so forth. So they're very cognizant of, what's happening. They knew moving in, specifically because we have this event coming up, that we're going to be in this position. But their direction was, with everything that we have going on, and obviously we're being proactive, let's move forward, and then, we'll wait to see where the EIC is at. But as far as, being stewards of the financials, that's every month that they look at that.
So if there's a significant deviation from budgeted expenditures during the year, that's addressed and approved by the board as you go?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. They'll question that.
Thank you.
Along those lines, so I met with the Maggie, who's the EIC representative on the board. Mike Whitler, who's the chair. I also had some side conversations with Todd Bach, the former mayor. He was very comfortable with what we're proposing. Mayor Blackburn. And we went back and presented this format a couple of weeks ago to the board, and they approved to proceed with it, as well as the funding amount.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, we're gonna move forward. We need a motion.
Move approval.
Have a second? All right, obviously we got some more discussing we need to do. What are the issues? When does fiscal year start for KDC?
November 1st.
Okay. Is there any additional information that this body would like to have to consider this request?
Greg, I think my biggest reservation is, I mean, obviously this year, and to some extent the end of last year, was unusual, pandemic, unsure going into it, how that's gonna affect things. The business community, I mean, I think it's admirable that KEDC asked for a lesser amount from the stakeholders going in, thinking this is gonna be maybe a belt tightening year. I guess what kind of throws me off a little is that while the revenues are less, the expenditures aren't necessarily, and still trying to, and maybe Mike, is Mike Whitler here, maybe he can kind of chime in, but Mike, are you surprised with the level of the expenditures, or, you know, is that something that the board budgeted going in or made during the year adjustments?
There weren't any adjustments to the budget. In my mind, when we've come here over the years and had a surplus or had a carryover, a lot of times that's criticized. And so there's been an effort to try to get us closer to, you know, ending the year without a lot of excess. So you know, it's, I mean, that's, you know, that's one thing. And as far as the organization itself goes, I've been on the board since 2015, or the end of 2015, and then watched the organization fairly closely the, you know, five years before that. I think the team and the organization that we have right now is the most effective one that we've had. And the big difference that I see is the relationships that they've developed, and that a lot of it's what Gil brings to the table with him. But when you look at the relationships with the state of Texas, the Texas Economic Development Office, and then with the site selectors across the nation, the industry in general, the IEDC, it just, Kerrville has gotten a lot of attention in the economic development community because, you know, because of the team we have and the things that they're doing, and there's a lot of value in that. So, you know, another comment, and if you look at the Texas Economic Development, what's the association? TEDC Incorporated. If you look at their salary survey for a community our size, 25 to 50,000, you know, serving 25 to 50,000 people, typical budget is about $750,000. And the typical staff is 2 to 3. So we're on the, we're still on the low side of all of that compared to our peers in the state of Texas. So it, you know, I think what the organization is getting done for the dollars being spent is, I think we're being more effective now than we have been in the past 10 years. So. The other thing I've seen is seen several directors leave us, and there's a lot of turnover in that profession. And every time that happens, the organization basically goes through a 1-year reset. And we're in a better position now to get through one of those changes now because of, the planning, the processes that, Gil has been working on. So, but that's a tough thing one of the biggest things that I've seen is every time that happens, you bring in a new person with a different approach, and it's a big reset, both in the hiring and just getting things moving again, so.
And can I ask a question too? If I'm looking down at the net operation over the years, so you look at what, 18, 19 is at 28, then you jump about 60,000 to a net of 85, and then you paid it basically, you asked for less this year with the intent, as you say, of paying it down almost to nothing just to get to the year, and you're wanting to now return to having that reserve. Is that oversimplifying, or tell me more about, and,
Yeah.
and I'm curious too, second part after you talk, because I'm the newbie on this, how everyone feels about what kind of balance EIC should be carrying, should how they should be operating. I'm just curious about everyone's feelings on that too.
So again, over the years, when we've come in with a big carryover balance, that a lot of
Right.
times is a subject of criticism.
And you get
Now
funded
coming in
less,
with
yeah.
$1,600 projected, that's probably a little too far, so the budget has a little more carryover there. As far as the direction that should be taken, we do have the stakeholder retreats periodically and one scheduled, and that's really where we try to get input from the entire community on how to proceed. I think Gil makes a good point in that, a big part of our growth is coming, and a big part of our effort is getting the right growth here, getting the best jobs that we can get here, and it's a personal opinion, but I think the organization is doing better than it has been historically.
I think, Mike, the problem is that the budget numbers jump so high. So, and the first time we talked with Gil, trying to understand what was the basis of that jump so far, and where was this money going? And it was kind of confusing with the event in November that's forthcoming. As a revenue producer, and having to fund that was kind of, if this is a freestanding event, it has its own funding. The whole process, our relationship with KEDC, and I've been part of some of the stuff you've talked about, is always a question of where are we going to spend the money and what's the return on that money. It's always been that issue. And you're right, in the history, we had a lot larger reserves that got whittled away down, and now we're back down to zero, and we need to get some reserves just because you don't know what may happen. That's really what it boils down to. Every budget has a contingency. You have to have some contingency. You have contingency in here. It's just hard for me to look at these numbers and to see where is the big jump. And that's the hard part for me. That's what it boils down to. I'm trying to understand it, and I've talked to Gil about it myself. I support KEDC and always have, and I think it's a fantastic organization that we have. I just don't see where the money is being required, but just.
If we have to cut the budget, what are you gonna recommend cutting, Gil?
So the way the budget is designed is going back to having a little bit of surplus, is designed for a year from now. We're at about 46,000 plus in surplus to give us that nest egg that we had in the last 2-3 years. I will say that last year we came back, not to the IC, but at the KDC board, and we had a surplus. It was one of those where well, you don't want to have that much of a surplus. So we're trying to kind of gauge that. Look, if it was $400,000, we can operate with that. That covers, salaries and some of our basic programs. We could have a watered down version of the event that we're looking to do, and I shouldn't say watered down, but just a smaller event. But we're coming in with a bigger ask to really provide that service to the business community to help them really now grow. So it's just a matter of, you know, do you want the Cadillac version or the Toyota version?
Just,
I can operate within.
Well,
within
and
both
the
of them.
reality is that although the budget last year was significantly less than this year's ask, what you spent last year operating is essentially within, you know, $10,000 of what your budget request is this year, correct?
Yes, correct.
Gilded, I guess this is a great problem to have. We went out and tasked the KEDC with hiring the best person they could, and they did, and you are doing a phenomenal job, and now I think that's what we're kind of that's what I'm gasping at, is how long can Kerrville sustain this type of growth? And that's where my fear is. You've done exactly what we've asked you to do. You've exceeded what we've asked you to do, in my opinion. And it just scares me. I'll be honest with you. I get nervous about if we continue to get these prospects and continue to get this growth, can we sustain it from housing, all those things that we've talked about, employment, water, infrastructure, roads, traffic, and that's my concern. This has nothing to do with the job that you've done, and if we can somehow find that magic path to sustain it and control it, I'm all in. But it makes me nervous. That's just an old time
Gary, help me connect the dots with with your comments. Are you saying that it's the concern over how Kerrville grows over the near term that's having an influence on your decision about the budget for KDC?
No, I think I'm actually okay with the budget from what I've been able to break down, and I'll support the budget this year. I think mine's a bigger picture. It's not just the near term, it's the mid to long term.
Right.
I don't want to end up as New Braunfels and San Marcos, which we probably can't stop, 15, 20 years down the road. I don't know. That's going to be somebody else's problem, probably. But I think it's something that we have to look really hard at. How hard do we want to shake the trees if we can't pick up the fruit? So there's not a concrete thing that I can point to. It's an overall feeling of I don't want to lose Kerrville and the identity of Kerrville. And I sound old, and I guess I'm getting old, but I have a real concern about that.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And I hear Gil's comments about we do have some opportunity to shape it, and I think spending money to go out and get the top tier manufacturers and business owners that maybe they'd have the ability to go anywhere. I mean, because if we don't go pursue those, what we're going to end up with is a bunch of, not that there's anything wrong with them, but strip shopping centers and big box outlets, and Kerrville's going to look like every other town on every other interstate in every other county, in the United States.
And I also recognize that's not just KEDC's role. That's the city and citizens and the zoning, and there's a whole big mesh of bureaucracies, for lack of a better word, that have to work together to make that happen. So,
well, I think that's something that in the stakeholder meeting, those are the kind of things, the long-term picture, that I would assume that's the place to really dig into that topic and have a
Yeah,
good,
most
fruitful
definitely.
discussion.
Yeah, because the last one we had almost 2 years ago, that was to give us our 2-year roadmap. Originally, the idea was to have a strategic plan come out of that. But I was kind of like, I don't think we're ready. Let's do a 2-year roadmap to get us to, really land a big project and start working from there. Except that was a little inverse. The big project came first, and then, some of the planning came afterwards. But now we're in a position to really start working on our 3 to 5 year strategic plan, specifically for economic development and, drawing from the 2050 plan. The 2050 plan is one of the reasons that I was here. A lot of the work had already been done. It's now the implementation phase. And that's exactly where we're at right now.
Well, I feel like that with EIC being the single biggest payer sponsor of KDC, it makes sense for us to dig into and understand the budget. But I think there's a line there that we cross at some point when we begin to second guess or try to usurp KDC's board.
no,
And y'all have obviously done great work. The results are, on the board and in the trophy case, so to speak. So I want to understand, we got to do something with this budget. If there is additional information or we've got concerns or questions, let's get them on the table and deal with them.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, hang on a
I have
second.
a-
We got Greg.
Yeah, I have
wants
a
to-
comment. So I just want to make it real clear, you guys have done fantastic work in economic development, and I'm 100% in support of that. I don't particularly even have any problems with the budget request. And since this is my first year on EIC, I did not see the budget that was submitted last year. And maybe it sounds like part of the plan was, since there was a big budget surplus, we're gonna operate off of some of that surplus to get it worked down so that we don't have to ask for as much. If that's the case, then that really addresses my concern. It really has to do with submitting an annual budget to this body in support of your grant request. Is that budget dependable? Can we feel confident that that's gonna be a number that is operated within and is a reasonable expectation? Obviously, there's always going to be things that come up, but is that something that is managed to consistently? That's really the only question that I have.
And I'd just like to add one other thing. Also, it seems to me we're kind of getting in a new era here with KEDC in the last couple of years, with getting Killdeer in here, the seminars you're trying to do to even promote that. This, to me, is a prime year to maybe risk a little money with our sales tax boom that we've got. That it's not much of that excess we're talking about putting into KEDC. And that's why I'm happy to do it, or to vote for it, because I think this would be the time to invest a little more while we've got this surplus run up in sales taxes. Let's see how it goes. If it doesn't work, then we can talk about scaling back or doing whatever going forward.
Okay.
But I think if ever there's a year where we've got a little extra money to, to put in and not risk hurting any other projects that may come our way, I think it's this year. So that's, to me, I think it's a good investment.
Gil, Mike, to Greg's question, was that a big part of the thought process in the using the reserve this year, to be able to have a lower ask going in, or did you just adjust as you went on throughout the year?
It's kind of a combination of both, because again, it was, we knew there was a surplus there, COVID happened, and again, we're kind of like, you know what, there's businesses that are calling our office, businesses are hurting, let's start developing a program specifically for them, and come in with a lower ask. Fast forward a year and a half later now, here we are, and we've launched, that center, some of those programs. But some of that costs, it'll cost money. And now we're having to adjust as well to get us to a position where we're at, almost 3 years ago, to have some kind of surplus now moving forward.
Do you recall, Gil, if last year's budget would have reflected a zero net gain for the year?
Last year, when we came in, it was 300,000+. Actually 200-some thousand, I think, for the EIC. And we did it in a way where we were almost going to get to zero. It's like, okay, we can do it. We can, work this, and we plan the whole year out knowing that we would go through most of the funding.
Part of the change was leaving the chamber, which was a change in your rent, because your rent now, you had to start paying rent, which you weren't paying under the chamber model for a while.
Yeah,
So-
that was part of the strategy.
So that's-
Renegotiating that.
Yeah, so that's a whole different, that adds to your budget operating expense.
Well, I would think that
False, which is a false ad because it was there before.
Correct.
we can ask you if this body wants it, quarterly, monthly, whatever basis. You could also report back to us on budget versus actuals, couldn't you?
Absolutely, not a problem.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. That passes unanimously.
Are we also gonna rewrite the contract for another 3-year extension?
So this would be year 3 of the 3-year extension, so the contract we would anticipate a rewrite going into next summer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gil.
Thank you, Gil.
All right, next item is the EIC Administrative Services contract with the city.
Let's cut that thing.
Before you today, you do have an administrative services contract. As you recall, we do this on an annual basis. It does provide for a number of different services that the city provides to the Economic Improvement Corporation, including engineering, project management, legal services, financial services, administrative services, investment services, and regulatory financial reporting, in addition to annual audit, and then our general project reporting to you. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I make a motion to accept his proposal.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any discussion or questions? None? If you approve, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. All right, finally, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session to consider workforce housing under sections 551071, 72, and 87.
So moved.
Motion,
Second?
second. All right. All those in favor of adjourning? All right, we will adjourn into executive session. We'll stay in here and ask the rest of the group to excuse themselves.